Good afternoon to you. 3:06 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. Coming up this hour, we talk law and order with Sean Kennedy. He's the president of Virginians for Safe Communities and the executive director of Coalition for Law, Order, and Safety. A lot to discuss with him. A lot of big headlines this weekend on that subject. John Conrad is here at 4 o'clock as President Trump floats the idea of retaking control of the Panama Canal. We'll explore that with John. And then Caitlin Richardson is here at 5 o'clock from the Daily Caller News Foundation as the Biden administration continues to dole out your money to abuse children. All of the revelations ahead. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. If you're traveling right now, please have a safe experience. Thank you for tuning in as you're on the roadways. If you're coming to our area, welcome. Glad to have you here for the holidays. Christmas just 2 days away. Hanukkah approaching as well. And man, this is a wonderful time of year. And you know, if you get a chance this week, pause, reflect on the blessings you have, and express your gratitude to the Lord above for them, because we have these blessings as a gift from him. So it is really nice to be here with you today. You are a gift to me. There's a lot of crazy headlines, as always, that are transpiring. And among them, this horrific video out of the New York City subway of an attack, a murder, a homicide in cold blood that took place yesterday morning, Sunday morning, as an illegal alien set fire to a woman who was apparently sleeping on a subway train in New York City. And all of this captured by cell phone video, people taking videos, standing around taking videos, not putting the fire out, but instead filming the chaos. Police officers walking by wearing jackets, no sense of urgency to whip those jackets off and try and smother the flames or anything, just allowing a woman to burn to death on a New York City subway. That fire started, we now know, allegedly by an illegal alien who fanned the flames on camera to accelerate her demise and then sat on a nearby bench as the police finally responded. In fact, he was so sort of blasé about the whole sequence of events that the cops actually came up to him and asked him to move because he was near a crime scene. He, it turns out, was the criminal. Just awful all the way around. Let me begin with the bare bones of this shocking story. They come to us from, so much of the coverage today comes to us from the New York Post, who, of course, is aggressively covering this. Guatemalan migrant arrested for setting sleeping New York City subway rider on fire, watching her burn to death, according to cops. A Guatemalan migrant has been arrested for allegedly lighting a sleeping subway rider on fire in Brooklyn on Sunday morning, then watching as his innocent victim burned to death in what the police commissioner called, quote, one of the most depraved crimes one person could possibly commit. The savage killing, which happened at around 7:30 in the morning on an idling F train at the Coney Island Stillwell Avenue station, shocked commuters, MTA workers, and NYPD Commissioner Jessica Tisch, who said Sunday that the heinous crime took the life of an innocent New Yorker. Quote, as the train pulled into the subway station, the suspect calmly walked up to the victim, who was in a seated position at the end of a subway car, and used what we believe to be a lighter to ignite the victim's clothing, which became fully engulfed in a matter of seconds, Tisch said at a press conference. Patrolling cops smelled and saw the smoke, then followed it to the flame-covered woman, the commissioner said. They extinguished the blaze, but the victim died at the scene. The video, I wouldn't go seeking it out, is horrific. It's sort of everywhere. You don't really have to seek it out. If you're on social media by now, you've probably seen it. If you're on X, you've probably seen it. I can't begin to explain why the woman seems to just be standing there engulfed in flames and not moving, not reacting to it, other than she maybe lacked the mental faculties to engage that panic mode that you would think you would have. She went from a seating to clearly to a standing position, but she's just engulfed in flames. She is not moving. She's just basically standing there, very little movement. No idea why. Perhaps we'll find out more as the autopsy is completed and more information comes out. There is somebody's identity is being shared all over the internet right now, a woman's identity, but authorities have not yet confirmed an identity, so I'm not going to just start spreading a name around. Not clear, but it is crystal clear that a woman was just killed in an event that should never have happened at all. What do we know about the attacker? Well, his name, the illegal Guatemalan migrant, the Post says, accused of torturing this woman on a Brooklyn subway train, has been identified as Sebastian Zapata Khalil, 33 years old, who snuck back into the United States after he was deported, federal immigration officials said today. He's now in NYPD custody. He first entered the United States illegally at the Arizona border back in 2018. That would have been when President Trump was in office, 2018. But he was nabbed after he got into the country just days later and then shipped right back home. So the Trump administration got a hold of this guy in 2018, and they ejected him from the country the second they had him. He would later cross the border again, the New York Post says, claiming that he dodged federal agents and found his way north to the 5 boroughs. Although it's unclear how long he was even in the city before the horrific F-train attack Sunday. What is clear is that by April of 2023, that's last year, he was staying at a Days Inn hotel on 36th Street, which had been converted into a migrant shelter, the first of 4 tax-funded facilities in the city. And then when he was issued a transit ticket in 2023, he gave an address of a shelter on Randall's Island, the sources said. So he was staying in taxpayer-funded housing as an illegal alien under Joe Biden's presidency. So it is not clear when he came back into the country. It would not be a surprise if that was during the Biden era, where our borders were kicked wide open to the types of people who would set fire to women on subway trains and so many others. And he was deported under the Trump administration. So yet another one of these horrific stories, each almost more horrific than the last, this time involving an illegal alien from Guatemala who Trump had deported, getting back into the country, staying in taxpayer-funded shelter under Joe Biden, and then using his ill-gotten presence in America to kill a woman on a subway train. As people just walk by and do nothing to help her. It took forever. Police officers passed her multiple times. And think about, the Daniel Penny saga. I'm wondering, where were the Daniel Pennies? As a man takes out, I think, a Bic lighter. They found a Bic lighter on him. They found a lighter on him. I don't know if it was a Bic, but they found a lighter on him when they got him into custody. And he's setting fire to her clothing? What if Daniel Penny or somebody like him was sitting there to observe this as it was happening? Could he have stopped it? Yeah. What if there was a Daniel Penny there who helped put the fire out as soon as it started on this woman? Was able to quickly move to suffocate the fire. And yet, what was the lesson that Alvin Bragg and company have left New Yorkers with? Don't intervene, don't help, don't save, don't take care. In fact, keep to yourself and let chaos continue around you. That's the message that they sent as they prosecuted Daniel Penny for defending an entire subway train from this type of depravity. As a man, in Daniel Penny's case, as Jordan Neely came on that train threatening to kill people, saying he's ready to go back to jail, he doesn't care. He had a history of literally punching women in the face and breaking their faces. Daniel Penny was the first guy in a long time who said, enough, I'm going to stop this, and he did. And for that, he wasn't thanked by the city of New York. He was villainized. And it was only by the grace of a jury that he was able to walk away from that awful treatment. And now you have an illegal alien killing more people on a New York City subway train. Now, on the very same day, that's yesterday, Sunday, that this attack occurred. It occurred in the morning. This was not a mystery. It was a full-blown fire on a subway train as a woman was burned to death. Yesterday afternoon, Kathy Hochul, the awful governor of New York, posted social media posts bragging about subway safety and how subway safety is so much better now these days in New York. She wrote on X Sunday afternoon. This is, again, hours after this woman had burned alive. In March, I took action to make our subway safer for the millions of people who take the trains each day, she said. Alongside that post was a video. Here's what that sounded like.
I'm on the subway train heading out to Queens Center. I have a lot of, not quite last minute, but I have holiday shopping to do. I've got an adorable 2-year-old granddaughter, so it's a lot more fun to shop. I can take the subway wherever we need to go. And I want all New Yorkers to feel safe, which is why we've added so many more National Guard, over 250 more people that'll make sure that your ride is as safe as it can be.
Same day. The same day. What is going on in her office? Hours later, Kathy Hochul bragging about how safe the subway is, when, of course, it clearly is not. Clearly is not. More and more people are actually avoiding taking mass transit in New York now. The streets are even more full with cars, vehicles. New York's not a cheap city to drive into. It costs a lot of money to cross those bridges, get into the city. But people are preferring that to the lack of safety on public transit, which is unfortunately on display with each passing day on social media, and if you have the misfortune of riding it. Now, Kathy Hochul posts that, and there's another Democrat, Congressman Richie Torres, who is himself apparently hoping to become governor of New York someday. So he's taken to attacking Kathy Hochul from time to time in an effort to climb over her to become governor. And he posted in reaction to Kathy Hochul's social media thing this weekend, yesterday. He wrote, 2 hours ago, Kathy Hochul took a victory lap for making subways safer. She congratulates herself on the same day 2 subway riders were stabbed in Queens, one in the face and one in the chest, and another was barbarically burned alive. Has there ever been a more tone-deaf governor in the history of New York? Now, on its face, that's a perfectly fine post to X. That makes a lot of sense. You should call out Kathy Hochul for posting such an absurd thing on a day when there was so much barbarism on the subway in New York, pretending like, oh, it's so safe. But Congressman Richie Torres has some problems of his own when it comes to this issue. One of them is that he was quick to condemn Daniel Penny in what is now a deleted tweet. This tweet, I don't know when it was deleted, but at some point it was yanked off of the internet. But this is just a piece of advice, whether or not you're a crazy person like Richie Torres, or you're just a young person who's experimenting online, posting things, your random comments. The internet is forever. Your parents are right about that. If you post something to the internet, that thing's locked in for good. So think really clearly before you do that. Congressman Richie Torres said this back when Daniel Penny was charged. Now that Daniel Penny has turned himself in and faces second-degree manslaughter charges, he should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. There was no justification for choking Jordan Neely for 15 minutes and ultimately choking him to death, said Richie Torres, again, in a now deleted post to X. He got rid of that one. So he memory holed that one. And now all of a sudden he's the guy who says, where are the Americans to stand up for each other on these trains? He said, in the F train at Coney Island, Stillwell Avenue, a demented man lit a sleeping woman on fire with a match, causing the victim to burn alive and die at the scene, he wrote yesterday, before his Kathy Hochul tweet. In New York, dangerous people are allowed to freely roam the subway, he wrote. Yet the political establishment insists on gaslighting the public with deceptive headlines. Quote, crime is down, and quote, the subways are safe. This is the same guy who was ready to condemn instantly Daniel Penny for standing up to the type of disgraceful, depraved behavior that he is now appropriately condemning. Speaking of gaslighting. So there you go. This is one of those awful stories that seems to have every theme of depravity in it, of our era in it, of the Biden era, especially. It includes an illegal alien who Trump had deported, instead brought back into the United States, finds shelter paid for by taxpayers under Joe Biden, uses that ill-gotten liberty in the United States to kill a woman on a subway train, to light her on fire. Right after that, the governor of New York is bragging about how safe the subways are. A man who is hoping to take her job is gaslighting you into trying to pretend that he all of a sudden is tough on crime and wants to make the subways safe, when in fact he was attacking someone who actually did make the subways safer, Daniel Penny. And this leads me to this conclusion, which is this country needs Donald Trump. And this country needs Daniel Pennies. We need a president who secures our border, prevents murderers from getting into it in the first place. And we need American citizens who are willing to stand up for each other so that collectively we can all make this a better place to live. And people can actually get back onto mass transit, subways, just to get to work or just to get home to their families. Yeah, the illegal alien attack on a New York City subway catching everyone's attention. Just horrific. The Tom the Hammer Homan was on the Fox News channel this morning reacting to this. Here's what he had to say.
Well, look, this is another example of an illegal alien killing American citizens. It's almost a daily occurrence now, because historic number of criminal aliens walking the streets because this administration's policy in sanctuary jurisdictions and lax immigration enforcement. ICE has their hands tied. Secretary Mayorkas have given them priorities that they can't even go arrest an illegal alien anymore unless he's convicted of a serious crime. Then maybe they can arrest him. So this is on this administration. As far as Governor Hochul, shame on her. She supports sanctuary status in that state. She welcomed thousands of illegal aliens to her state. She sent them to Buffalo and Syracuse. Murders occurred by illegal aliens in Buffalo and Syracuse. She has a green light law. ICE and CBP can't even work with local law enforcement. Local law enforcement can't even share DMV data with these people.
Amazing. Yeah, he's totally right on all counts. Awful leadership in that state. What can change? What can change? Sean Kennedy will join us next with that. Coming up, John Conrad, a shipping expert, will join us at 4 o'clock. We'll talk to him about President Trump's plans, potentially, to retake control of the Panama Canal. We'll get John's reaction to that, what it might mean for the United States. And then Caitlin Richardson joins us at 5 o'clock from the Daily Caller News Foundation. We'll talk about the Biden administration doling out a lot of your money in order to abuse children and keep that a secret from their parents. Typical. You can join us 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. I started the show today talking about a woman who was set on fire and killed on a subway train in New York by apparently an illegal alien from Guatemala, who's now in the custody of the NYPD. Originally came into the United States in 2018, was deported by the Trump administration, and then subsequently returned at some point, including using taxpayer-funded housing in 2023 in New York, and is now, again, apparently killed a woman. For more on this story and a lot more as it relates to law and order, Sean Kennedy is here. He's the president of Virginians for Safe Communities and the executive director for the Coalition for Law, Order, and Safety. Sean, good to have you back with us, sir. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Okay, so I just want to start there. New York, yet another horrific story, not surprisingly, on the subway there. And all of the familiar villains are once again rearing their ugly heads, aren't they?
Absolutely. And you know what is so sad and tragic, not only about this woman losing her life, and I also work for police nonprofits, and I am an utmost defender of the brave men and women of law enforcement. But unless there are some extenuating circumstances, there were two police officers within feet of this woman as she burned to death, that even if they couldn't have actually saved her, they made almost no effort, according to that video, to do so. And that is a disgrace. Honestly, that puts a black eye on law enforcement. Their job is to run towards danger, run towards things like that. And the fact that they didn't is really a sad statement about what the morale is and what the expectations in the esprit de corps are in some of these law enforcement agencies. But that aside, this individual sort of may prove the point about what Donald Trump said during the election campaign and was frequently derided and frequently dismissed, and we were told he was a liar, which was that they're emptying their prisons and they're emptying their jails and there's asylums. This individual did such a heinous thing. We must assume, just out of Christmas spirit or something, that he is mentally disturbed. He clearly is, but whether or not he's clinically mentally disturbed, we don't know. But this only goes to show that we know some of the people who came here are criminally insane, and they were not vetted, and they were allowed in, and things like this keep happening because there is no expectation that we will ever find out who they are, or there should be any kind of block on people like that. And this individual recrossed the border, took advantage of benefits, and then committed this atrocity. That's really what it is. It's an atrocity. This is not even a run-of-the-mill murder. This person intended to surprise someone and premeditatedly killed them in a horrific way for the sake of some joy. He sat there and watched it. It's unbelievable.
He fanned the flames. He walked up to her and was fanning the flames in order to make it worse. It was really, it is one of the most depraved things you'll ever see. And also, as a way to die, it's hard for me to imagine a more painful way. So there you have it. And you know, he came into the country. He was deported under the Trump administration. And you know, one of the things, I haven't seen it today, but typically when you bring up a crime like this, you point it out. You're just like, man, this is bad. This shouldn't have happened. You have lefties have traditionally said things like, oh, well, Americans commit crimes at higher rates than immigrants. This is the way they talk. And it's like, what are you talking about? This man should not have been in the country. This woman would be alive today were it not for our border being wide open, right?
Exactly. This is an absurd debate, though. I've done some work and analysis in the Center for Immigration Studies about the Texas data, which is ad nauseum cited via Cato by all these lefty outlets that they commit fewer crimes. Actually, it's wrong, and they made huge category errors in the Texas data, Cato, which is subsequently cited by others.
Yeah.
But that aside, these are all excess deaths. These are all preventable by a border enforcement regime. They should not have been here. We have to deal with the Americans who are depraved psychopaths and drug-fueled killers and cartel members that are American or gangsters. They're American citizens. Now, we have recourse, put them in prison or execute them maybe when they commit certain crimes. But we don't have to accept people who are likely to kill someone, especially an American citizen, on our soil.
Yeah, my retort has always been really simple, which is we've got enough of our own problems. In other words, why do we need to import others?
Exactly. And you know what? This kind of loops back to something else that happened on the subway, last year, which is Daniel Penny and all the circumstances there. And we don't need to litigate and discuss all the things there, but there was a perception that he was a threat to others. And he had proven himself in the past to be so. This woman, maybe she has a record, maybe at the time posed no threat to anyone. And yet people were calling for absolute prosecution and sometimes, even the death penalty against Daniel Penny for what he did, which was clearly a justifiable homicide, at least in the eyes of the jury. And this individual's accountability is going to be nil. We know that the left is going to move right along. This is horrific. And if there weren't video, we would have already seen this buried.
Yes.
But it was on Twitter, and therefore we could see it. So it matters. But the left will move on. It was the holidays. That happened last year. What are you talking about?
Yeah. Well, this video that you're talking about that we've all, quite unfortunately, many of us have seen now of this woman burning alive, it sort of encapsulates for me the outcome that the left seemed to desire out of the Daniel Penny trial, which is that people are going to walk past this kind of horrific incident with indifference, that instead they'll keep their distance. They won't help. They'll film it. I mean, you have, as you pointed out at the top of our conversation, police officers just walking by. They have jackets on. You could take your jacket off and attempt to suffocate this fire, but nothing like that occurred. People just let her burn to death in a standing position on a subway train. And I can't help but notice that, Daniel Penny seems to be one of the few people who's ever intervened to stop this chaos. And he was pilloried. There was an attempt to really destroy his life as a result of this. And for the rest of his life, he'll still have to fight the demons that they sicked on him. And yet here you have a story that's perfectly encapsulated. It kind of seems like the outcome that the people who wanted to take down Daniel Penny desired.
Well, I mean, at least they're indifferent because the villain in this case is somebody who they sympathize with. They're not. It's not as the prosecutor in the Daniel Penny trial kept reminding us that the pigmentation on Daniel Penny is white. He's a white man. Did you know he was a white man? The fact that this is a Guatemalan illegal migrant is not going to be remembered, and all that fact that his undocumented status and he shouldn't have been president of the United States and the border failed, all that will be ignored. It will come out that he's got schizoid disorder because some rinky-dink defense attorney diagnoses him as such with some, pay-for-play psychiatrist, and then we'll move right along. Oh, he's going to get into mental hospital. And by the way, with the mental hospital criminally insane convictions, once they are deemed to no longer be a danger to themselves or others, according to psychiatrists, not according to, the justice system, they are then released, given a bag of 3 days of meds and told, be on your way. So this guy will be back on the street if he gets a guilty by mental insanity deal.
It's too crazy. All right, let me move to another a massive story today as it relates to law and order. As of yesterday, there were 40 men who are on death row in federal custody in the United States of America. But as of this morning, there are now only 3 remaining because Joe Biden just granted clemency. He commuted the death sentences of 37 of those. The three exceptions here are Dylan Roof, Robert Bowers, and Dzhokhar Tsarnaev. And so those were highly publicized murderers that I guess Biden didn't feel like he could wipe away their death sentences for some reason, but all of these other horrific people, he could wipe away their death sentences. What do you make of this, Sean Kennedy?
I mean, of course, what happened was they did the trial balloon a few days ago. You probably saw it on Twitter and elsewhere that they said we're going to do that. And the first thing that everybody flagged was Dylan Roof killed 17 innocent people in a church basement.
Yep.
This horrific anti-Semite killed women and children and innocent men in a synagogue.
Yep.
And of course, the Boston bomber terrorized the city of Boston and obviously people in public events for generations. So all of them will, eventually get the needle. But the others who committed acts of terror and demonstrate a continued violent propensity will be allowed to live out their days because of this supposed mercy by Joe Biden, who, according to the New York Times, consulted with Pope Francis. And Pope Francis's adamant opposition to the death penalty, by the way, goes in contradiction to not only centuries, if not, and 2 millennia of church practice. But when I did catechism 25 years ago, death penalty was supposedly rare and limited and sparing, but it was still allowed under church doctrine. They have just unilaterally decided at the new Francis Vatican that the death penalty does that. So, of course, that gives Joe Biden cover to say, I'm a good Catholic. Pope Francis told me to let all these terrible people out, except for the people that would politically hurt him. Because if the death penalty is universally wrong, the Boston bomber should get life, Dylan Roof should get life, and this anti-Semite at the Tree of Life synagogue, I don't want to say his name, he should get life too, because the death penalty is wrong. It's either always wrong or it's not wrong.
Yeah, for sure. And so this is yet again one of those cases where the Biden administration has made a decision based on the publicity surrounding the individuals rather than any underlying principles. So here you have 3 highly publicized murderers, but the 37 who just received clemency included, as the New York Post puts it, child killers and mass murderers who were just taken off of death row. And you start going down these stories. I mean, they're each one more horrific than the last, whether it's luring young girls into the woods and raping them and killing them, or whether it's there was one of these guys had kidnapped a bank executive and then tied him to a chair, tortured him, threw him over a bridge, and he drowned while tied to a chair. And these guys are on death row having committed some of the most horrific crimes, but because they weren't well publicized at the nationwide level, therefore they're granted clemency. So the media has what, like a heckler's veto or something? This is strange.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what happened. Was when they floated this a few days ago, last week, the media called out the 3 names they remembered, and then they flagged them. But you know what? The 3- and 4-year-old boys who were killed on the side of the road outside of Miami by cartel members and left in a ditch. Their names deserve to be remembered, and the SOBs who killed them are going to spend the rest of their lives being served food and working out and watching cable TV from an American prison because Joe Biden said justice will not be done.
Yeah, this is a really nasty end to a pitiful presidency, and I shudder to think that this isn't the worst of it, because we've got about a month left, quite unfortunately, of the Biden presidency, and it strikes me that we may not have seen the worst of it. What do you think, Sean?
Somebody, half jokingly, and I have no idea if this has any legal compunction, but the idea that they could somehow overturn not necessarily the commutations, but some of the orders and things like that he's doing, because obviously this Wall Street Journal report came out questioning his competency, and that we could retroactively repeal things to the 25th Amendment. But in all seriousness, somebody should file legal standing and say that, that he is incompetent and push for it. Mike Johnson, somebody, because this, who's in the line of succession, because this is disturbing. This stuff, I don't blame Joe Biden for this, because I honestly know what my grandfather was like at dementia at 91.
Yeah.
You could have told him that the sky was on the ground and he would have believed you. The floor was lava. Like, he didn't know where he was. Joe Biden doesn't know where he was. These people who are pulling the strings are 1 ounce short of being full evil. Like that 4-year-old boy, that 3-year-old boy, that 12-year-old girl, the bank executive, they killed. This is what I don't think people fully understand, is this is not over yet. The death and mayhem that these 37 people wrought on America is not over yet.
Yes.
Of the 37, 9 killed somebody in prison. They have the opportunity to keep killing now that they won't be left in solitary confinement on death row. They will go back into Gen Pop and general population, and they will be available to kill others. They killed a prison guard.
Yeah.
They killed an off-duty cop. These people are not to be treated lightly, and we're acting like this is an act of mercy when they're going to be given clemency, in this case commutation, and other people may die, prison guards, other law enforcement, other prisoners who didn't get a death sentence because somebody uses these people as cartel hitmen or whatever they want to use them for, because they're now golden children. They can't be executed.
It's remarkable. All right, more on this story coming up, but in the meantime, Sean Kennedy, thank you very much for your time today. Please have a very Merry Christmas. Good to talk to you. All right, let's go to the phones. Garrett is calling in from Fredericksburg, line 2. Garrett, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hi, Vince. So on the one hand, they just tell us that Joe Biden doesn't have the mental capacity. And then on the other hand, they try to tell us that he's commuting the sentence of these people. So who's really doing letting these people off the hook on death row?
Great question. Yeah. So somebody else is moving his hand around.
I've been wondering for the last couple of years, who's truly pulling the strings in the government?
Yeah.
But maybe Trump, he can't put the sentences back, but maybe he can send them to Guantanamo or something to make the rest of their sentence just miserable.
Yeah, they'll still be in federal custody. Life without parole is the new arrangement. But your fundamental question continues to be the one that pervades so many of these topics. Who's really pulling the strings? That Wall Street Journal report over the weekend indicating, it's his executive staff has been pretending to be the president of the United States throughout the entire presidency and doing the functions of the president of the United States, not elected to any position at all whatsoever. And yet there they are. Sean Kennedy rightly pointing out somebody should raise a legal challenge to all of this, saying the president doesn't even have the competence to be the president of the United States. How can he just wave his hand and get rid of all of these sentences in that state? Maybe Speaker Mike Johnson could speak up. He's in the line of succession. Sean Kennedy just mentioned that. All right, stay with us. We're going to talk about what presidents can do. Can a president retake the Panama Canal? John Conrad will talk about that suggestion coming out of President Trump's mouth this weekend.